Good afternoon, everyone. Today we'll be talking about process sets and scheduling tasks, what they are and how they work. We'll be showing examples in Epicor 10, but most items are also relevant for Epicor 8 and 9. This slide shows the basic steps that we will review today, and each of the following slides will show you how to use each of these items. We'll go through a couple of points about each individual item listed here. We're going to talk about processes, process sets, which are groups of processes, using the system agent and setting up your schedules in the system agent, and then assigning tasks to those schedules, and then along the way we'll also show examples. And then if time permits, we'll also show a few examples of setting some of these up in Epicor 10. So first we're going to talk about the processes, and here we can see the icons for the processes that you can use to set for schedules in Epicor 10, 9, and 8. So the first icon is what the icon looks like in Epicor 10, and the second icon shows an example of what it looks like in Epicor 8 and Epicor 9. Basically, they both have a little part of the icon that looks like a gear, so that is how you can tell those are processes in the Epicor menus. You'll see that there are many items in the Epicor menus that are processes, and most often they're under the general operations submenu of the main menus. Each process performs some type of action that is run in the background and reports the status through System Monitor. When you have the chance, you should review your System Monitor, and if you have the permissions, make sure you're viewing all actions for all users, and then you can look for the task type column shown here with the arrow that shows the type is a process in order to narrow down which tasks performed in System Monitors are the processes that run through your system. You can choose any process to run manually or to schedule any processes, or you can choose to do both. So here the example shown is the generate PO suggestions, and it shows that it's the type of process, when it started and when it ended, and who ran it, and the status is complete. Next we'll talk about process sets, and as I mentioned, basically process sets are just groups of processes put together. So you can choose to group your processes because they relate to the same overall function, or you just might want to group them to run at the same time, even if they're unrelated processes. Similar to the processes, process sets can also be run manually or scheduled to run. And the order in which you save a process in a process set will be the default order in which the process is going to run within the process set, unless you check the box to run them simultaneously, or you change the order by moving the process up or down in the list in your process set. So here we show the screens for the process set maintenance and how to schedule the process sets. So process set maintenance is where you define the name of your process. In this case it's customer info, and you put in a description, customer master information, and then you choose the options for the orders of the tasks if you want them to run consecutively or concurrently. So here you can see they will process in the order of sequence 1, 2, and 3. However, the buttons on the left, you can move the items up or down. Of course, the move up is grayed out when you're on the first item selected, but otherwise, if you were on a different item, you could also move up. And then here's the checkbox about allowing simultaneous processing of tasks. And each of these individual processes needs to be added to a process set through scheduling. And we'll show an example of that when we get to the examples. Scheduling the process set instead of the processes makes it easier to keep them together, and you don't have to, individually schedule each process. You have to individually submit them to the process set in the beginning, and then you schedule the whole process set. When you need to add a process to the process sets, the steps are similar to scheduling the task, but instead of submitting the process, you will save the process to a process set. So next we're going to look a little bit at the system agent. The system agent is found under System Setup and System Maintenance in Epicor 10. And you can expand the tree, as I did on the right hand side here, to view the schedules and the tasks that are set to run for each of these schedules. And you can also view all of your scheduled tasks in your System Monitor on the Scheduled Tasks tab. And you can see the process, or the type column is a process, and then the description will give a general description of what process is running, other than when you run dynamic query exports. It really just gives that description instead of telling you which BAQ export you're running. And then on the right hand side here you can see the schedule description, which is shown in your system agent here. It shows weekly every 2 weeks, monthly first day of the month, and those are the same schedule descriptions that show up here. And then the next run on will show the date and time. However, at least in our version of Epicor 10 and maybe other versions, the time is off by so many hours shown in System Monitor, but it shows the correct time if you look in the actual System Agent view of the schedules. So when we actually go into the System Agent, we'll show this in more detail, but there are different types of schedules available in System Agent. You can run a startup schedule, daily, interval, monthly, a one-time schedule, or a weekly. And you need to enable your schedules and make sure that you show the next run date and time correctly. And this is where the time will not necessarily match what's shown in System Monitor, because System Monitor is evidently displaying it incorrectly. However, it does run by the time you set up in your System Agent. The options available for each of the different types of schedule are based on the schedule type chosen. For example, startup won't have the dates as it's shown here. Instead, when you choose a daily schedule, you'll have dates to select from in case you really didn't want every day of the week. You might just want the weekdays, for example. And then if you chose monthly, you have the options to choose the date number of the month, or the last or first, Friday or Tuesday, or whatever choice you want to make for your monthly schedule. So here I've shown just a couple examples of the schedule types, and we'll see more when we actually go into Epicor. You can also, uncheck the enabled box to temporarily or permanently turn off a schedule if you'd like. So next we'll be talking about the tasks assigned to schedules. You can view them again in System Agent and System Monitor. And you can set to a schedule by selecting a schedule from the drop-down when you open the process with the options selected that you would like to always have selected when you run the scheduled process. So here we show a couple of examples of processes that many companies might use as scheduled processes. So MRP and PO suggestions are a couple of examples. So on the left here we have the generate purchase order suggestions, and you might want to keep in mind or review any of the already scheduled processes to make sure that long-running processes do not interfere with each other. You also want to make sure your schedules make sense for your business operations. Always make sure to choose the schedule from the drop-down list and click the recurring button checkbox and put in a user description if you choose. The final step is to select the submit button shown here and to save the process, or to save the process to a process set, which is the button next to it. The other options chosen for your process will be specific to your company, and most likely the business system expert in that area of the software should be able to direct you to which options to choose for the criteria of the actual process you're running. Whether you're going to choose a certain cutoff date, check any of these boxes, etc. Your business area expert should be able to help you with those decisions. And on the right hand side here we show the example of processing MRP. Often companies might choose to use more than one processor and more than one schedulers. That is a decision that you will probably make based on some trial and error and making sure that you aren't using too many resources but using enough resources to make your MRP processing go through as fast as it can without affecting your businesses. And again, here you have the different options that your business system experts should be able to help you define which checkboxes you want checked and what your cutoff date, etc. is. If you want to run net change or regenerative, you might want to run net change weekly and regenerative on the weekends, for example, etc. And again, you need to make sure that you choose a schedule from the drop-down list and then click the recurring button and then choose the either submit or send to a process set to run with other processes at the same time, and then schedule that process set. Another common example of scheduling processes are BAQ exports. Similar to the other processes, basically you define your criteria at the top here, which query ID, what format you want it to output, your output file name, and then you choose your schedule. In this case, it's daily, weekdays at noon, and then you check your box for recurring, and then you can choose either the submit or the send to process set to group a bunch of BAQs together if you'd like, or a BAQ along with your MRP process in one process set, etc. This screen shows some examples of multiple processes in a process set. So to add tasks to a process set that you previously set up in process set maintenance, instead of submitting a process, you click the button to save it to a process set. Once you do that, a pop-up window will come up to prompt you to ask you which process set you would like to add it to. So in this case, we went ahead and did our business activity query export process, and notice we did not change the schedule. We just set up all our criteria, and then we select the button to submit it to a process set, and then that gives us the choice on which process set we want to choose by selecting from the drop down box, and then you can click OK, and then you would see it if you went back into your process set maintenance. You would see the different items that you selected to submit to your process set. And so these three business activity query exports would run together at the same time whenever the process set is scheduled to run. So that concludes the presentation portion of today's Lunch and Learn. There's a lot of information and pictures about what happens along the way. You can go ahead and work with scheduling processes in your test environment first and then move them to your live environment. When you do work with some in your test environment, you want to make sure that the results are separated out between environments when you are testing, and also consider that when you copy environments, you may want to remove schedules and tasks to not use the extra resources if they are not needed. So now I'm going to go into Epicor and show a little bit about the system agent and processes. So under system setup in Epicor 10 and system maintenance, we have system agent. And we'll open that up. And the current agent ID is shown there. And in some versions of Epicor, you might have to click your refresh button to see your schedules and your tasks that are set up as schedules. So here you can see we have 4 different schedules set up in our training environment, and we have a startup task schedule, interval processing, a 5-minute schedule, and a weekdays at 9. So you can expand the tree to see if there's any tasks under each of these, and then you can also view them in the tabs here. We're going to look at each of the schedules first. So if we look at the startup tasks schedule, you'll see that it's a schedule type of startup, and there is no next run date. Currently this one is not enabled, but there is no next run date because it is set to run whenever Epicor is started up. We have a couple of tasks under the startup schedule, and we can view the task details here to see that it is task number 1, production yield recalculation, and the user who submitted it and when they submitted it. You can also see there's a task 2 and the same type of information. We'll look at our interval processing. If we look at the schedule detail, we can see that does have a next run date. It is set as enabled, and it's an interval set to run every 1 minute. And there is one task assigned to that schedule, which is multi-company direct server process, and it shows again who submitted that task. We also have a 5-minute schedule, which again is set up for the interval 5 minutes, and shows the next time it is set to run. And that also has a task, which is actually a process set. Then we have the weekdays at 9 a.m. If we look at that schedule, that is set for daily. And if we click on the daily tab, we can see it is only checked for weekdays. So that is why the description shows weekdays at 9 a.m. Um, it shows it's set to run at 8 a.m. on 11/13, and I don't know if that has to do with the daylight savings time change or not, but basically it usually should show the same time as when you set up as your description. And then we can see the different tasks that are set up to run at 9 a.m. There is an individual dynamic query export, second dynamic query export, and third item that is a process set. So all of those could be grouped together in a process set, or you can run them individually, or there might be different users who set them up to run, so they might be set up individually for that reason, etc. We can also see these same items in our system monitor. So here we can see the system monitor's scheduled task tab, and we should have our schedules that look similar to what we had in the system agent. We can see the different schedules as we saw in the tree view of our system agent. And we can see the next run on time, and time does not match what is shown in the system agent. However, the time in the system agent is the actual time when these would run. So basically today at 9 a.m. we had some running, and they are set to run again tomorrow at 9 a.m. So we should see the ones that ran today in our history tasks. So we'll look for some started on today's date and run around 9 a.m. And actually, as mentioned, it actually shows 8 a.m. today that these ran, because probably the change in daylight savings time. So we can show the, it can show the processes completed and what time they completed, so you can kind of get a gauge of how long it took to run each task. And that might be especially important when you're looking at your MRP processing, to make sure that it doesn't conflict with other processes that are set to schedule, or your database backup, for example, etc. So that's a look at the system agent and system monitor. We can next look at an example of actually running the export process. So the easiest one to show is an example of a business activity query. We're going to go ahead and open the business activity query export process. And there you can search for a query that you want to export. You can choose any one that you want to try and export that you are allowed to run within your company. And I think we're in Epicor 6, so I'll search for one in Epicor 6. And instead of choosing the schedule now, you're going to choose whatever schedule you want to set it up to run on, and select your recurring checkbox, and then you can either choose to save it to a process set or submit it. So then it'll show that it's submitted, And if we look in our system monitor, and we can look at the scheduled tasks, and here we can see the newest task was submitted today 11/12 at 9:10 by manager, and it is a scheduled task to run at weekdays at 9 a.m. It's a dynamic query export. So we can also show an example of doing a business activity query export process to save the output to a process set. Maybe we want to look at our part bin information along with our customer information. So we're going to choose to schedule it for now, but we're going to, instead of submitting it, we're going to save it to a process set. And here we should have any already set up process sets in the system, and we can add it to our previously set up process sets and just click OK, and we can see that it would be added to that process set. So under System Management Process Sets, we can find the process set maintenance item, and we can search for that process set that we just submitted to, and we can see the third item is a dynamic query export that we added to the already set up order backlog. And we can choose to move up or down these items, or choose allow simultaneous processing of these tasks. But to actually have this process set scheduled, you need to go to the schedule process set option in process sets here, and then you would choose your schedule and choose when you want it to run and select the recurring checkbox, and then you would click submit. I'm not going to do that in this case because this process set was already set up to be a scheduled process, so I don't want to interfere with what's already set up. But basically now you have an idea of how all the different options work in Epicor and how to use and schedule processes and use and schedule process sets, set up schedules in your system agent, and view the tasks that are assigned to those schedules in both your system agent and your system monitor. So I hope you found today's presentation informative and you're able to put into practice some of the scheduling tools that are available for you to use in Epicor. Coda Bears is here to help with any questions you might have in the future. Thank you for your time,